The United Kingdom is preparing to reintroduce a policy that has divided the country for decades, a mandatory government-issued digital ID for all adults. The move, to be announced by the Prime Minister on Friday, aims to curb illegal working and respond to mounting public pressure over immigration. While most European nations already require citizens to carry some form of ID card, Britain has historically resisted, citing deep-rooted concerns about privacy and civil liberties. That resistance is now being tested again. ID cards are not new to the UK. They were first introduced during World War II and remained compulsory until 1952. In 2005, the idea was revived by Tony Blair's Labour government, which sought to introduce biometric ID cards to tackle illegal working and establish entitlement to public services. However, as BBC political correspondent Ian Watson recalled, the scheme faced technical challenges and political opposition and hadn't been implemented by the time of the 2010 election, when the incoming Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition scrapped it. Now, more than a decade later, the plan is being resurrected by the current Labour government under Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Ministers have studied Estonia's advanced digital ID system, which citizens use to access public services, and believe that shifting public attitudes, particularly rising concern over illegal immigration, have made the idea more acceptable. Earlier this month, the Prime Minister made his position clear in an interview with the BBC. Keir Starmer said, "I'm determined to stop people making that crossing across the channel and to get people out of our hotels. And therefore, I am looking at ID cards or digital ID, because we do need to look at the pull factors." For Starmer, a digital ID is not merely an administrative convenience. It is part of a broader effort to deter irregular migration and address one of the most politically charged issues facing his government. As Watson explained, the Prime Minister believes this is an important weapon in his armoury to tackle illegal immigration. This framing reflects Labour's calculation that the public wants stronger action, especially after years of frustration with existing measures. The proposal, however, is far from universally welcomed. Critics on both the left and right argue that it risks government overreach and could fail to address the root causes of irregular migration. One opposition MP voiced strong doubts, declaring Starmer scrapped the Rwanda removals plan without having any other plan in place. He said he was going to smash the gangs. He hasn't done that. Digital ID cards is not going to smash the gangs or stop the boats. I fear this is a bit like what they tried to do before, where it's authoritarian, where it's centralised, it's controlled by the state. And we should oppose that, like we did before. Civil liberties groups have also raised alarms about privacy risks, fearing that a digital ID system could become a tool for mass surveillance. Beyond ideological objections, there are also practical questions. As Watson reported, if digital ID requires a phone or computer, what happens if you don't have one? The government insists it will consult on these details, and officials emphasise that Britons should not expect to be required to prove their identity online immediately. The decision to push forward with digital IDs reflects a political gamble by the Labour government. The immigration debate has become increasingly central in British politics, particularly amid a surge in small boat crossings of the English Channel and public dissatisfaction with enforcement efforts. Reporting live from Westminster, BBC correspondent David Cornock described the challenge. There are lots of practical questions, difficulties of persuading people that they need this sort of digital ID. Starmer believes that the arguments have changed since 2005, when the Tony Blair Labour government tried to introduce ID cards. He thinks that psychologically people have moved on, that people are comfortable with having lots of digital ID for their daily life. Cornock emphasised the political linkage. You heard there that he's clearly linking this policy with the whole question of small boats, because he believes it's too easy for people to come to the UK and then disappear into the environment and work illegally. The Labour leadership appears to be betting that the shift in public sentiment, combined with frustration over migration policy, will outweigh long-standing concerns about state intrusion, but the debate has rekindled old divisions. Civil libertarians argue that introducing a mandatory ID represents a dangerous expansion of government power. Others say the measure risks stigmatising migrant communities without addressing the systemic issues, such as global migration pressures, criminal networks and asylum backlogs, that fuel irregular entry. Cornock suggested that the government's calculation is shaped by the political climate. Immigration has soared as a political issue of concern to voters. If you look at the opinion polls, if you look at the rise of Reform UK, you can see that immigration has soared as a political issue of concern. He added that Starmer is expected to emphasise this point in an upcoming speech, saying that the Prime Minister clearly thinks that a digital ID pass is part of reassuring people that the government is actually tackling something that matters to a lot of voters. Supporters of the policy often point to the experience of European neighbours, where national ID systems have been widely accepted and integrated into daily life. Countries like Germany, France and Estonia require citizens to carry ID cards, and in many cases these cards serve as keys to public services, voting and digital transactions. Estonia's digital ID model in particular has been cited as a success story, enabling secure access to healthcare, banking and government services. Labour ministers believe such a system could modernise Britain's bureaucracy while tightening immigration enforcement. Opponents counter that the UK's political culture and legal traditions are different, with a historic emphasis on individual liberties and limited state oversight. They warn that importing continental models may clash with domestic expectations and legal frameworks. Even among those sympathetic to the goal of better migration management, there is scepticism about the feasibility of a nationwide digital ID rollout. Concerns range from the security of personal data to the potential exclusion of vulnerable populations, such as the elderly or those without regular access to smartphones or the internet. As Watson noted, the government says it will consult in the details, so don't expect to have to prove your identity online just yet. But experts warn that without careful planning, the system could exacerbate inequality or become another bureaucratic hurdle for law-abiding residents. Technology advocates highlight the need for robust cybersecurity, citing past breaches of government databases. They stress that public trust will be essential and could be undermined if the system is perceived as insecure or prone to misuse. The Digital ID initiative marks a defining moment for the Labour government's approach to immigration and civil liberties. It underscores the party's effort to demonstrate toughness on border control while differentiating itself from past Conservative strategies, such as the Rwanda deportation scheme. But the move risks alienating parts of Labour's traditional base, including civil rights campaigners and privacy advocates. It also opens a line of attack for opposition parties, which argue that the government is reviving a failed policy instead of focusing on more effective border enforcement and cooperation with European partners. For now, the policy's future depends on how well Labour can navigate the debate, balancing public demands for action on immigration with the enduring British unease about centralised state control. As the Prime Minister prepares to unveil the plan formally, both supporters and opponents are bracing for a prolonged battle. Consultations will address critical questions such as how the system will operate, what technology will be required, and how privacy concerns will be safeguarded. Public opinion is likely to be decisive. If voters see the digital ID as a necessary step to curb illegal immigration and modernise government services, the policy could gain traction. But if fears about surveillance, exclusion or inefficiency dominate the conversation, it may falter, just as it did in previous attempts. In the meantime, the issue has already reignited a national conversation about the balance between security and liberty and about how Britain defines its approach to identity in the digital age.